Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video we're going to be looking at the Leopard Prototype 773, which is a medium tank for the Western Alliance in the Cold War game mode. As the name suggests, this is a German medium tank. It's in Era 1, so post-war of the Cold War game mode, and it is the first German medium tank that you'll come across in the Western Alliance tech tree, and it comes after the M47 Patton. And it's an absolute beast. I've had an absolute blast. It's a bit of a struggle when it's stock, but it is a very mobile tank with hardly any armour, but a fantastic gun and relatively good concealment. And hopefully I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to use this tank efficiently in today's video. I'll be going over all of the statistics of this tank, and I'm going to be comparing it to two of its close competitors in the M48A5 PI Patton and also the Centurion 5.1. I'll tell you my commander and equipment setup and how that affects the tank's stats. And I have two gameplays for you, the second of which is a 12k damage plus game, or 12k plus damage game I should say, in this tank that I had just the other day, where I was sweating my balls off trying to carry the team, and for once I actually did it, and it's the highest damage I've done in post-war or Era 1 of Cold War, and I hope you stick around to watch that gameplay because it is an epic game. I've put timestamps in today's video if you wish to skip ahead, but hopefully you'll stick around and find out something new about this tank, or maybe you're struggling to play a tank with pretty poor armour and want to know how I play lightly armoured medium tanks. So let's get stuck straight into talking about the Leopard Prototype 773 in comparison to the M48A5 PI and the Centurion 5.1. So we'll talk straight here about the colour coding system that I've got going on. Green is the best stat, red's the worst, and orange is somewhere in between. And these yellow blocks here are updated stats with my commander and equipment setup added, which we'll talk through a little later on in this comparison. But we'll get stuck straight into the stats of these tanks. Looking at the hit points, the Type 773 is the worst in this comparison, but only by 50 hit points less than the M48 and 100 less than the Centurion 5.1 at 1950 hit points. And it has the best view range in this comparison at 500 meters, which is substantially better than its other two competitors. And now we get on to one of the best aspects of this tank, and that's the mobility. Everything here, as you can see, is pretty much green apart from the engine horsepower, but don't be fooled into thinking that makes this tank slow, because this is the lightest, the weakest armoured tank out of this comparison, meaning that this 830 horsepower engine gives this tank a power to weight ratio of 21.56, a top speed forwards of 73 kilometers an hour, a top reverse speed of 29.3 kilometers an hour, a hull traverse of 42 degrees a second, and a turret traverse of 34 degrees a second. So essentially, you move like a light tank, and you are the profile and the size of a medium tank with no armour, so you have to bear that in mind when you're moving around the battlefield. But I'll talk you through how I like to play it during the gameplay. But in comparison to the other two tanks, you can see that the mobility blows the M48 out of the water, and even the Centurion 5.1, which is relatively mobile, struggles to keep up with the Type 773. So you can flank with ease, change flanks with ease, you can circle heavy tanks and even slower medium tanks, and you're going to be the first to get to the battle and react to whatever's happening, should you notice it, with the aid of the minimap. But now we're going to have a look at the guns, or I should say gun, in this comparison, because all of these tanks have a 105mm gun with the exact same alpha damage on their standard premium and their third ammunition choice, which is either HE or HESH rounds. So in terms of the ammunition on the Type 773, it fires APF SDS as standard, APF SDS as premium, and HESH as its third ammunition choice. You have 1478 meters a second shell velocity on its standard rounds, 1455 meters a second shell velocity on its premium rounds, meaning that it's fantastic for firing at mid to long ranges and sniping. You don't have to give too much lead at all. And should you wish to fire the HESH rounds, which actually have pretty decent penetration, it goes to 737 meters a second. And if we look at this in comparison to the M48 and the Centurion 5.1, you'll see that the shell velocity is the same with the standard rounds. With the premium rounds, it has the best shell velocity because the M48 fires heat, so it's a lot better than that, and it's slightly better than the APDS rounds on the Centurion 5.1. And with its HESH rounds, you can see it's only 2 meters a second worse better, sorry, than the worst in this comparison, which is the Centurion 5.1, and it's miles behind the M48A5 or the M48A5 PI Patton's 1,173 meters a second on its HE rounds. But you can get used to firing the 737 meters a second with the HESH rounds if you just adjust your lead. Basically, you're doubling and adding a little bit extra to your lead that you give with your standard and premium rounds, and with the fairly decent penetration of 210 millimeters, you can make this work on lightly armored tanks. And in this instance, you're basically going to be firing at other Leopard prototypes and hopefully penetrating them, because the Leopard prototype has terrible armor. And I'll just talk you through the armor really quickly while we're on that subject. I would go to the armor profile in the garage and talk to you about it, but there's really no need. I'll just tell you now, the thickest part of the armour is 70 millimeters on the upper hull, which can get some ricochets from low penetration rounds because it's angled back. 65 millimeters on the mantlet of the Leopard prototype, 60 millimeters on the side of the turret, and the side of the Leopard prototype is like 30 millimeters, I believe. Yeah, it's 30 millimeters on the side. It's got kind of overhanging little slanted side bits which are a bit a bit thicker, but not enough to bounce any rounds. And if you come across one of these tanks, just fire HESH rounds or HE rounds if you're confident, and don't fire it into the traction. You should be able to penetrate this thing and take it out if it's sitting out in the open. We're talking more about the penetration on these rounds then. On the premium APF SDS rounds, it's 344 millimeters of penetration, which is much better than the 300 on the Centurion 5.1 and 6 millimeters less than the heat rounds on the M48A5. However, bear in mind, at long distances, these APF SDS rounds do lose quite a lot of penetration. So if you're firing at long ranges, I highly recommend you carry these premium rounds, because even though they lose penetration, you will struggle to penetrate thickly armoured targets, and it's not going to be as good as the M48A5's heat rounds, but you do have that better shell velocity, so it's kind of you picked your poison there, really. You are going to have to improve one stat to get worse than another. But the shell velocity, the penetration on this tank is absolutely fantastic. And on the HESH rounds, you get 210 millimeters for 480 alpha damage. And it's the same as the M48 and the Centurion 5.1 in terms of the penetration and alpha damage on the HESH rounds, with the only difference being the M48 fires with a better shell velocity at 1,173 meters a second, which is the same as its heat rounds. So, and it's just 2 meters a second better than the Centurion 5.1. So it's not all bad news in terms of the HESH rounds, but it just means that you're going to have to give a little bit more lead, double your lead, add a little bit extra, and practice with that, and you can make these HESH rounds work. But they're definitely better up close and personal, and you should be able to carry a few rounds to put into lightly armored targets. But yeah, overall, great penetration, very decent penetration on the standard rounds and on the premium rounds and on the HESH rounds. And now we get on to the gun handling, and as you can see here, it's all good news basically, apart from the gun depression and maybe the ammo capacity. So your aim time is 1.9 seconds, your accuracy is 0.3, your DPM is 2,488.2, your base reload is 9.4 seconds, you carry 58 rounds of ammunition, 8 degrees of gun depression, and 20 degrees of gun elevation. So the best aim time, the best accuracy, the best DPM, and the shortest reload on this 105mm gun on the Type 773. Much better DPM than the Centurion 5.1, and even a little bit better than the M48A5. The accuracy is really, really nice at 0.3. You can get that down to a very good level, as you'll see here, and I'll talk you through my commander and equipment setup in just a second. The DPM is also quite good for a 105mm gun, and in terms of the ammo capacity, even though it's sort of midway between the M48 and the Centurion 5.1, which carries 70 rounds, it doesn't really matter an awful lot, because to go through that, you're going to need to have, I'd reckon, like a 13 to 15k game in Era 1. And not many people are going to be able to do that, I would suggest. In terms of the gun depression then, finally, as we come to the end of the statistics of these tanks, 8 degrees, although it's the worst in this comparison, it isn't too bad, and there are a lot of ridgelines that you can make this work. It's 1 degree less than the M48 and 2 degrees less than the Centurion 5.1, which has 10 degrees of gun depression. However, the elevation is really nice at 20 degrees, which is the best in this comparison, which is 2 better than the Centurion 5.1 and 1 better than the M48A5. You do have to bear in mind that the armour on the Centurion 5.1 is not too bad on the turret, and you can also sometimes side scrape, and the M48A5 PI's turret is fantastic, so that's fantastic hold down, and that's basically the reason why it's got a little bit less DPM, gun handling and mobility, because it invests it into that armour. Same with the Centurion 5.1, but I hope that's an interesting comparison for you. In terms of my commander and equipment setup then, in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, gunner stabilizer, and advanced powertrain. The only reason I run advanced powertrain is because I've kept it on since it was stock, because it was quite sluggish. But I'd highly recommend you use improved ventilation to improve your DPM and gun handling even more, or maybe traction system to improve your top speed and your hull and your turret traverse instead of the advanced powertrain. In terms of my commander, I run 6th Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Situational Awareness, and Armour Angling. Again, there are a couple of skills here that might be quite useless for you, especially in Cold War, and that's the situational awareness and armour angling. The reason they're on is because I just borrowed a commander when I was playing through this tank from another tank that I had in World War II. I would maybe take off the situational awareness and armour angling and use track mechanic, and maybe improve your concealment a little bit, or maybe use firefighting, something like that would aid this tank, because you don't have any armour and they might be able to hit your fuel tanks quite often, things like that, or general mechanic, because you do get your ammo rack damaged quite a lot in this tank, and it might be very useful to repair modules a little bit quicker. So with that setup included here, I have updated the statistics in this yellow box. My engine power is now boosted to 871.5, power to weight is now 22.64. I can now go forwards at 76.65, reverse speed at 30.76, which is very, very quick backwards. My traverse speed stayed the same on the hull at 42 degrees a second, but my turret traverse speed has now gone up to 39 degrees a second, so I can outmaneuver pretty much every heavy tank in Era 1 and most of the other medium tanks as well. And in terms of the gun handling, it's improved my aim time to 1.82 seconds, my accuracy to 0.2, which is absolutely phenomenal. My DPM's gone up to 3,206, and my reload has gone down to 7.3 seconds with this setup. I also run combat rations and sometimes enhanced smoke, so if you run your enhanced combat rations you will get a little bit better than that, but for the most part with a tank that has no armor, it's very good to use smoke screen, whether it's the enhanced or the standard version. I highly recommend that. But that's enough talking about this tank. Let's get stuck into talking about the gameplay. Righty-ho then, this is the first replay in the Type 773. We are fully upgraded in this replay, and we are on Mountain Pass, which I haven't seen for a while. I really wish that this was introduced back into higher tier gameplay in the World War II game mode, but yeah, that's for another discussion. So with the fantastic mobility of the Leopard Prototype here, we're going to rush forward into the position and the bush and the rock that you see just in front of me, and we're going to spot the cross in the sort of south or the middle of the map here. As you can see, we are outspotting medium tanks that are going across, and we're also able to put shots in using the True Vision system. And then when we get spotted, we're going to duck behind this rock, keep moving backwards and forwards so people don't have an easy shot on my turret. And I'm quickly going to get shots in with the fantastic gun handling that this tank has, and basically just rinse and repeat. We're going to continuously spot the tanks up that are to the right of me and also straight ahead of me. And this kind of tactic I found when you are in Cold War or World War II in this position. It's a very aggressive position and a tactic that only works if you are one of the more powerful tanks, if you have good mobility and you're sort of small enough to fit in this little gap here in this little nook. And of course in World War II you have to worry about artillery, but thankfully as of yet anyway, we don't have to worry about artillery, just the ATGMs in Cold War, but ATGMs aren't around in Era 1, which is very nice. I can sit here kind of with impunity, and I can spot anything that's crossing, spot things to my right, get some nice assistance, and we're already up to 1628 damage, 709 assistance, and we managed to block a round for me. Looks like 105mm, going with 390 blocked. We're just going to pull backwards here, try and get a shot there, The M46 duped me, but we're getting some assistance for spotting up this tank. We're going to be able to hold down in this little gap. He's going to have to either get out of the way or stop and aim, and it looks like he's just sat out in the open. I'm getting all the assistance because I'm the furthest forward, and that's the kind of thing that you can do when you are in the Leopard Prototype. You can get into some fantastic... I'm struggling to speak again. You can get into some fantastic positions very quickly, but you can also struggle or you can also get yourself into danger very quickly as well, is what I was trying to say. So you do have to play to your strengths. If you feel like you can get out of the situation and you're in a dominant position, then I'd hold it. But if you feel like the need to retreat, or maybe you feel like you haven't got the sort of firepower to hold an area, then I highly recommend retreating, just like I'm doing now. Using the mobility of this tank, and you should be able to get out of the way and bait your opponents into the open. So what I've done here is come all the way down here. I'm baiting these tanks over the top where I know I have support in cover to my right, and also this Centurion 5-1 to my left, and they're just coming up. And I might not be getting all of the assistance, but I'm getting the occasional shot in. And I'm just baiting these tanks into stupidity, and that's what you can do with this tank. You'll see that even going in reverse over or just over 30 kilometers an hour is fantastic for ridgeline play, and you can make that 8 degrees of gun depression work on ridgelines, especially on a relatively flat sort of section of the map like here on Mountain Pass. Now we're going to flank around, hoping that the enemy was down below us, and luckily he's running away. I thought that was an easy shot, but you do have to let this gun aim in just slightly to stop the dispersion after moving, because it can blow your reticle a little bit bigger than you'd like to when you are moving at a low speed, or you have stopped for sort of just that half a second. The gun handling is fantastic, but if you're on the move, this thing doesn't hit an awful lot of shots. But that's why run and gun is so useful to have as a commander skill, because you can improve that and sometimes hit your shots on the move. Here we are just trying to make our 8 degrees of gun depression work, and this is the kind of limit that the 8 degrees of gun depression can kind of struggle at. But I've just turned my tank to the side, aiming over the side for the full extent of my gun depression, hoping that I can bait this Type 773 out into the open and maybe get some assistance or just get him killed so we can progress. And with all the good work that we did early on, we spotted the team up using our mobility and our great view range. We put some good shots in, got some assistance, got some tanks taken out of the game, and now it's just a clean-up period, and we're trying to get as much damage as we can. We're going to go in for the ram here on the FE101. He gets taken out, and it's just one medium tank left. This is a fantastic opportunity for me to show you the mobility of the Type 773. Normally, I'd think it's kind of the game over now. If I was in an M48 A5 PI Patton and there was a full health tank on the other side of the map, I'd kind of be resigned to maybe not getting any more damage or just one shot. But with this fantastic mobility, look at me, I'm the first one forward. I feel like I'm kind of like a light tank in this scenario. I'm going to be the first one there. You do have to bear in mind how much hit points you have left and who you're going to be going up against at the end of the battle, especially if it's closer than it is now. But we are in the lead by a substantial margin, so I'm just going to go straight in. No problems penetrating the Type 69-2 here with the fantastic penetration that this tank has. Popped some smoke there to try and disorientate the enemy, going into the sniper mode so I can see through the smoke, and not all the people that use the enhanced smoke screen know that. If you go into your sniper mode, go into first person, you can poke your barrel through and go forward to a point where the smoke is no longer opaque and you can see through it and take out the enemy. But that's a relatively quick game there in the Leopard Prototype, where we pick up 3 kills, 5,197 direct damage, 1,272 assistance, 1,408 XP, and a nice profit of just shy of 140,000 silver. But now we're going to get to the game that I hope that you all really enjoy. It's the game where I do over 12k damage in Era 1 of Cold War, and I hope you really enjoy the game. So then, we're now into the second gameplay of today's video. We're on Mannheim, which you would have thought wasn't the best kind of map for a lightly armoured tank like the Leopard Prototype, but it is a very large map that I can use my mobility to get around, and it works out really well for us. And this is the game where I do over 12k worth of damage in Era 1 in Cold War, and it's one of the highest damages that I've seen in Era 1 of Cold War. I've seen, I think, some replays of people doing like 13,000, maybe even 14,000, probably in an FV 4005. But to do it in a Leopard prototype, and the Leopard sort of line in World War II especially is one of my favourite lines, so it was really nice to do that. It didn't start in the best way possible, as you saw there. That light tank drove in front of my shot, but that's not really his fault. He's just doing a quick spotting run, and it was just unfortunate at the time I pulled my trigger. Yeah, I hit the friendly tank. However, you're seeing the fantastic mobility, getting into position early on here on this bridge line. We're out spotting some of those tanks down below us, and we're using the true vision system to get shots into tanks that think they are safe, and they're not. There's a little bit of a visual bug there with some of the ground appearing and reappearing, which was quite frustrating, because I kept thinking I was seeing tanks, but fortunately it didn't get me shot or anything like that when I was trying to sort of scan the horizon to see what was going on. But this is a fantastic position to use a tank like this. It has just enough gun depression to tip over the edge, use 8 degrees, and get shots in. I can spot whatever's on that hill pretty easily, especially if they're a larger, heavier, medium tank than me that has worse concealment rating. Light tanks I might struggle with, but I don't have to worry about 80 GMs coming in, and if I take one shot, as long as it's not from something like an FE 4005, then I'm willing to take a shot to get in a position like this and be able to deal some good damage. So in terms of my setup, you'll see at the bottom I carry a mixture of both the standard and premium APF SDS rounds. I feel like I don't really need to carry any more premium rounds than this because the penetration is so good on the standard rounds at 268mm, but it's nice to have some, maybe when I come up against something like an M48 A5 Patton, which we compared this tank to, and its turret and its hold down, and I just wanted to get through a situation where I was being outnumbered. That's the time to sort of switch to your premium ammunition, and you should be able to go through them with ease. Maybe in this gameplay I don't be able to use any HESH runs, I can't quite remember, but they're good early on for sort of taking out light tanks or lightly armoured medium tanks that have got themselves in to too much trouble too early on, which you can do in this tank if you're not careful, which I discussed in the previous gameplay. But here you're just seeing me firing on reload. I'm trying to make sure I've got hard cover in front of me, and I'm just going to be putting in shot after shot, and it's a very reliable gun. If you do let it aim, it can hit weak points very, very well. I'm trying to go for the tracks there on the T95E3, but for some reason that round, just as I talk about the great gun handling, just derps up, but it doesn't really matter too much. We are just going to be putting in damage as and when we can, and this kind of game was all about just firing when I could, keeping my hit points intact at the start of the battle as much as I could. I was willing to take some sort of shots in return here to take all of these tanks out. I'm very fortunate that they didn't advance all in one massive group, but when I did, like I'm noticing this M103A1 here, I'm rising above it to get above him, so I don't think he's got great gun elevation with that turret, so he might not have been able to actually get his gun up on me. We rose up, got a shot down on him. Unfortunately he's backed off, and now I'm just going to put some smoke there, but I unfortunately put it into the riverbed, which means I'm going to have to get out of this position because I'm going to be not going to be able to bounce any more shots here realistically, and I'm just going to be torn up. So I'm going to reposition using this tank's mobility. I run the advanced repair kit and the med kit as well, and I find that that's really useful because when you're trapped in a tank like this, you're more than often just going to be taken out, especially if there's something like an FE 4005, which is in Cold War Era 1, which is yeah, kind of crazy, but that's it. That thing can pen you with its HE or its HESH rounds, and you're going to be deleted within no time. So I highly recommend carrying the premium repair kit, even if you don't carry the premium med kit, because you're able to get it back after its cooldown. So we've relocated back to a further part of the bridge. Just wanted to be unspotted for a little bit, but now I'm just going to put shots in and help this medium tank that's below us. We're going to just do a sort of free aim thing there, or I should have just gone in and aimed for a weak point that I knew would have penetrated, but I have a feeling like it would have. Things like that can cost you the game, and I might have lived to have regretted that shot if it didn't turn out how it does in this game, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But the good thing, I guess, in terms of the matchup, was that there's a lot of these M50 Shermans. Obviously the new independent tech tree has come out, and there's a lot of players playing them and playing them stock, so I guess I was in a slightly more fortunate position to be able to play this tank where I could actually get the amount of damage that I do in this game in. but I'm so proud of it nonetheless. I noticed that all of my teammates are kind of behind me, and there's one even further sort of back below the bridge. So I'm not going to be way too aggressive. I'm going to try and go forward and spot tanks that I feel that I can within a reasonable range. Like I went forward there, spotted that T95 E3. We both put a shot into each other, and then it's just time for me to reverse back. I pop my enhanced smoke screen, and then I'm just going to go and support my heavy tank and make them use their hit points a little bit, and I'm going to be able to put in supporting fire. I'm definitely going to be supporting my tanks here when I can. I didn't mean to block this T34 heavy here, but I did want to get a second shot into that medium tank. The T34 heavy pokes back out for a second shot. Unfortunately, he gets taken down, but that means that we can get one more round into that T95E3, and then we're just going to have to relocate because he knows I'm going to be popping up on that corner again. And it's just about keeping the enemies guessing and supporting your teammates when you notice that they're in trouble. It's a very close game. As it stands, 4 against 4 with 8 minutes left on the clock, and it really is one of those down to the wire games. I'm just trying to keep a sort of a reminder in my head of where all of the enemies are on the map. I know that there's a tank in the centre, I know there's one down the bridge further down, and there's this M50 Sherman, so I'm trying to keep tabs on where all of the enemy tanks are. I don't know where the light tanks are. However, the light tank is, I should say, because there's only one. However, if that's the only tank I have to worry about, then it's not too bad. It's the most dangerous because of the concealment of light tanks and the speed and the size of them. But I should be able to deal with them with my pretty good view range and mobility myself, and I'm going to go on the bridge here, which means I'm able to use all of these buildings as solid cover should something come below me. And even on the bridge here there's lots of rubble, and there's like all of the pipes and things stacked up which I can use as hard cover, and I'm hoping that my medium tank over there can spot someone in the middle here. And now we've got this M50 Sherman in a crossfire, so I'm going to try and get as many shots in to this M50 Sherman as he can. I'm trying to use the third person camera here to see if he's fired, and when he does fire I pop round, notice he's turning the other way, and that gives me time to put my shots into him. We put one into the back of him. I know that he's looking up at me now, but he was on the move, so I took my chance, put another shot in. And when you're in a situation when you're like 1 against 4 or 2 against 4 like we are in this situation, it's all about taking out tanks as quickly as possible, not letting them all get into the same place and rush you. I'm trying to support my medium tank on the opposite side, on the opposite bridge, as best as I can. However, I feel like I had to sort of move because they knew where I was on that position on the bridge. That M50 Sherman is trying to get shots into me, but fortunately I've got these sort of bars on the bridge as hard cover. We couldn't get a gun depression over the back of the tank, which is a little bit frustrating. There's a ridge line or a ridge or a sort of bump on the back of the tank, as you can see there on the model, which means you have less gun depression over the back, so do bear that in mind. We had to sort of twist our tank to get a shot on him, but they know where we are. We were getting targeted. I had to pop my enhanced smoke screen there, and I'm just going to try and get out of the way. And I'm just falling back whenever I feel like I'm getting into a situation where I could be backed into a corner. I'm using the mobility of the Type 773 to try and flank around, try and give some support to my medium tank ahead of me, and also get out of that line of sight of that M50 Sherman. We do spot him. He is a one shot for us. I'm going to go forward and try and take him out of the game. That tank, or the medium tank that was left alive on my team, was full health when he was sat on that bridge, so he must have just sat there in the open, perhaps, or was just ganged up on by too many tanks, but I tried my best to support him when I could. We managed to take out that M50 Sherman as we knew he had fired and taken out our friendly tank. Unfortunately, as we were repositioning, we get spotted by the light tank, which we haven't seen for a while, and it's the Type 63-1, and oh my god, he's on 1500 hit points. He's full health and we are on 800 hit points, so we're going to have to do as best we can. I was hoping maybe to do a sort of ram here, but we get a shot and I immediately switch to my Hess rounds, knowing that I can two-shot him from this position, and it doesn't have the best rate of fire, so if I penetrate my shots, one through the upper hole there, within the next shot I should be able to penetrate him. So I'm just trying to wiggle, get an angle where he can bounce off, but fortunately with the fantastic DPM that was boosted by the use of the Hesh rounds, we take that light tank out really quickly, pushing our damage total to over 11,000, and now it's a 1 versus 2. They know where I was last spotted, so I'm just going to try and go along this bridge to relocate to the opposite side, but unfortunately this T95E3 catches us out, and now it's just a case of waiting until we are undetected and just trying to play the view range game. I should have better view range than him, but he is in foliage, which is going to make it hard. He starts to move, which lowers his concealment rating. I get a quick snapshot into him. I felt like auto-aim was probably the right choice there, and now it's just me against this T44A, who is also, I believe, on full health, and I'm just trying to see any signs of movement in the trees to see where he is spotted. And I'm backing up here using the fantastic reverse speed. I know he's going to probably come over this ridgeline here. I'm probably going to get an ambush shot in, then move further down the bridge and maybe flank him. That was my thinking at this point in time anyway. That's why I'm facing the opposite way. It's a bit risky putting my rear out in the open, but we get a shot there, track him in place. That's one shot down, but we're going to wait until we are not being targeted and we're not lit up again. And when he's on the move, we'll try and get another shot into him. It's a bit of a risky play where I'm at the bridge, because he could really quickly come underneath me and come up on the bridge, and in one shot, if he's using the big gun on that tank, I will be finished, which is why I'm going to come now, go around and flank when I was undetected. I'm hoping he still thinks that I'm sat there on the bridge, and I'm going to come in from the opposite direction. As you saw, I got a bit of hate mail there in this game from someone, I believe, on my team, calling me a noob. Yeah, I guess they should have waited till the end, the end results. But I guess they were frustrated. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it was the player on the bridge. I don't know who was frustrated I didn't help him on the bridge. But I was just trying to do as much as I could, because I know I don't have too much armor. But anyway, we've flanked around this T44A. Hopefully he's looking the other way. I'm going in here with speed because I feel like it's the only way, if I do get spotted and he's in a position that I was unsuspecting, I would be able to circle him, or either just zoom off in another direction and get out of dodge. We fortunately get a good shot there with the fantastic gun handling this tank has, and we're trying to juke him by going around that rock to the right, then around to the left, and I'm hoping that we are able to come round now and get another shot into him while he's facing another way. I have my enhanced smoke screen back, which can come in clutch if I need it. Try not to knock down any trees so he knows in which direction I'm coming if he's listening or watching out. It looks like he's flanked probably the whole way round. I'm constantly trying to look out on the horizon to see if I can see the profile of his tank with the true vision system. And now we're coming back kind of where we started, at the bottom of this bridge line. We do see this tank. I snapped with the auto aim. I didn't feel like I had enough time to sit there and aim, but I do pop that enhanced smoke screen, which is coming in sort of clutch in this position. I'm going forward to the smoke and into the smoke until it's no longer opaque and it's transparent. I can see through it, which means that we do get that one shot into that T44A. That leaves him on a one shot, and now we're going to see if we can get the high ground on the bridge. He comes for us thinking that we're going up. I thought that there was a chance there to get a shot into him, but the ground didn't go low enough, or low as I thought it was, which means that I'm now in an awkward position behind this rock. It's basically who blinks first loses, but we outspot with the fantastic view range of this tank, that T44A, with the high ground, gets shot into his turret with just under a minute left, which pushes our damage total in this game to 12,557 with 6 kills, 309 assistance. We block 200, make 223,000 profit. We get the master badge and 2,160 XP, and I think I just wanted to check how much my marks of excellence has improved in this game. I mean, maybe I don't, but it did boost it by a significant margin. I love playing this tank. I highly recommend playing this tank if you enjoy playing lightly armoured medium tanks, or you're struggling. It's a very good practice tank to play, because I feel like the gameplay in Era 1 is slightly easier than it is obviously in Era 2 and Era 3, and yeah, I highly recommend this tank, and the line looks really good. I'm just on the Leopard one now, and it's another very accurate mobile tank. So I hope you've all enjoyed this comparison mini review of the Leopard Prototype 773, and I hope you've all enjoyed that 12k damage game. Thank you all so much for watching. We're getting near 900 subs now, which is absolutely awesome, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.